Hi guys, it's Kate Jean and welcome back. Initially I was gonna do like a Q&A. I told you guys to ask me questions on my Instagram. I said that they could be Black Lives Matter related, and naturally a lot of them were. I tried to make that video as just like a regular Q&A, but honestly like I felt like the topics were just too deep. Generally the questions were just about my experiences with racism, and you know, I was quite hesitant even making this video, but I thought that maybe by sharing my experiences with you guys that it will do something. And also I feel like sometimes it takes a personal experience to understand how racism filters through our everyday interactions. I think that the most common question that was asked was my experiences of racism in education, and I get why I was asked that a lot, because school life, those experiences, they really kind of shape you as a person, as a young person. Yeah, I had a lot of experiences in school, some on the macro, some on the micro. When I was thinking about this question, actually I kind of thought about it in two ways. I feel like there was racism in the classroom in terms of the curriculum, but I also feel like there was a lot of like casual just racism that just happened outside of the classroom also. In terms of like the curriculum, the only time in mainstream education where I learned about Black people was slavery, the civil rights movement, and slavery again. Those were, you know, that was the Black history. When you have those lessons about slavery and all this kind of stuff, you never really discuss the legacy of slavery. Things like systematic racism, it's always just, you know, Black people were slaves and now they're not. Black people had to fight for their rights, and you know, now they have rights. And it's just like, that's it. There was no nuance when it came to speaking about race, and I feel like as a result, education really did miss its opportunity in educating young people about the legacy of slavery and systematic oppression that still occurs today. I feel like children understand race, and I feel like when I was younger I maybe didn't have the words to express the kind of ways that I felt race affected my life and affected the lives of others around me, and I feel like education didn't provide that either. But truly I feel like the curriculum was designed that way. When you think about white supremacy and all these kinds of things, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense. Of course you will not teach, you know, young Black children or, you know, children in general, the true severity of white supremacy, especially in the UK. And I feel like that dismissal of those systems, racial systems, really contributed to the ignorance that a lot of people have when it comes to race and speaking about race and understanding how people's lives are affected because of their skin color. Such a lack of representation, and to be honest I feel like those things are quite psychological, especially at that age. And I mean, in my personal experience, I feel like the cherry on top was in these lessons where, you know, the topic would be slavery. It was always just either me or one or two other Black people. Like, there was never more than 3 Black people when I was learning about these things. I remember one time we were watching this documentary about slavery and a picture of a Black woman comes up. She was a Black slave, and you know, this photo comes up and she's completely naked. And I remember just sitting there, and one other like white kid like starts turning around, like trying to see, like, I don't know if he was trying to see my reaction, or the N-word would come up in an English book and everyone would turn around to look at you and see how you react. And there was plenty of moments like that that occurred throughout, you know, my mainstream education. I felt like in moments like that, you feel like you're kind of on display, like everyone's looking at you to see how you react. But yeah, I had plenty experiences like that in the classroom. And you know, I think racism that occurs outside outside of the classroom happens in a different way in class. It's quite perversive. And also, I remember in secondary school when I was 14 or something, I remember I was with my friend at the time, and her boyfriend that was in the year above came over and completely intercepts the conversation that we're having. He gets his hand and he puts it around my shoulder and he says to me, you know, guys have this rule where they really shouldn't date anyone darker than them. And then he gets his hand and he starts patting me on the back and he says, you know, sorry, I don't make the rules. Growing up, I was never really an outspoken kind of kid. So I was just stunned, like really stunned that someone could just say that to you and just think that's okay to say to someone. And my best friend at the time just stood there and she didn't say anything. And I remember when I was in secondary school, I used to always like wear my hair in braids because braids are a protective style. So when you put your hair in braids, you don't have to worry about styling your hair every day. Super low maintenance. It's quite a cheap hairstyle for the amount of time that you can have it for, and it's just a super efficient, convenient hairstyle, especially for, you know, children and stuff. Yeah, my mum would just take me to the hairdressers all the time to get my hair done, get braids. You know, there was only one hairstyle on the menu anyways, but yeah, I used to always wear my hair in braids. And I remember the white kids used to, you know, touch my hair, say that I look like Medusa and all this kind of stuff. If people wanted to ask me questions about my hair, you know, fine, but it made me feel really uncomfortable and it really made me feel insecure about my hair. And you know, I feel like for a long time the belittling and antagonizing of black women was just really so prominent and in your face. People could say stuff like that to you and get away with it and not feel any way about it. And I feel like those experiences, I definitely kind of internalized them to an extent. I remember after I left secondary school, like I really just didn't want to wear my hair in braids because I felt like there was such a stigma around me, and it's only until recently that I had my braids again and it felt a bit liberating. So now let's talk about social media, because growing up, like that was the time when, you know, Facebook, Twitter, all these social networking apps were really coming into the mainstream. And you know, I grew up with those apps. I remember being like 13 on Twitter and just seeing, I guess the politically correct term is misogynoir, and I definitely saw a lot of that online at that age. I just remember going on Twitter and seeing tweets like black girls look like rats, and it'd have like hundreds of likes, just really detailing how much black women look like this, how much black women act like that, and I hate black women. And these tweets would get, you know, a lot of likes and a lot of retweets. And looking back, I really wish that, you know, I never saw those things. And I really feel like misogynoir is such a real thing. You know, definitely seeing things like that on social media really did damage, you know, my self-image, how I perceived myself. You know, it's no wonder people were saying the things that they were saying to me when you look at the things that people would say about black women online. So let's talk about misogynoir in the media, because I honestly feel like a lot of the hate that black women face stems from, you know, the media, the image that the media puts out of black people, especially black women. And I feel like it's something that I really would like to discuss with you guys. Misogynoir, especially in the media, I just remember it being so prominent, like growing up, like in the 2010s. There was a super lack of representation. I felt like black women were only valued or represented in media when they were just caricatures of black women. Big Mama House, Little Britain, and even YouTubers like Shane Dawson. I remember him like doing blackface and calling himself like any black woman stereotype, and people loved those things. People loved Shane Dawson, people loved Big Mama House and all these kinds of portrayals of black women, and I always found it very uncomfortable. People would dress up as black women just to, you know, be the butt of the joke. Quite clearly from my experiences, these representations actually have an effect on the way black women or black girls are treated. And you know, this this kind of caricature history archetype in media has a very long history. Hattie McDaniel, she was the first black person ever to win an Oscar. She won Best Supporting Actress for playing the role of Mammy in Gone with the Wind. She was a housemaid, a domestic servant, and a former slave of the protagonist. According to Google, the definition of Mammy is a black nursemaid or nanny in charge of white children, and that was the first Oscar awarded to a black person ever. Mammy is usually older, overweight, and dark-skinned. She's also characterized as amicable, loyal, and maternal. On occasion, the Mammy has also been depicted as the sassy black woman. She is devoted to her enslavers, and her primary goal in life is to care for their needs. And as I was reading this, I was just like, I swear that's literally the plot for Big Mama House. I feel like the Mammy archetype or caricature was so prevalent in that culture of Little Britain, Big Mama House, and Shane Dawson and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna quote Malcolm X right now because I think this quote is so necessary when talking about misogynoir. He says, "The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman." It may have not been called misogynoir at the time, but he kind of encapsulated the premise of misogynoir way before we had, you know, created this word for it. And I feel like black women, especially dark-skinned black women, you have all these stereotypes put on you. And even now, some people say to me, you know, I'm not really attracted to black women, but I'm really attracted to you. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, the Mammy archetype is an agent of misogynoir, and they all interlink together. You know, it's really something that as a black person you just can't run from. It really does have a lasting effect, and yeah, that's how I really feel. But okay, I'm just gonna end the video there. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're almost at 300, so please subscribe. Until next time, bye guys.